Pastor Nick here back again with Pastor Sholo, and we have Pastor Shawn from Voice of Prophecy who just preached for us today.
Hey guys.
That was awesome. And as you were doing that, it reminded me very much of the discussion we had here in this studio last Sabbath night with, help me out, what's the gentleman's name? Paul. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And he had talked about some amazing miracles God had wrought in people's lives, and then we sort of came in here and said, well, what happens when God doesn't work those miracles? And
oh, really?
That's very much the topic that you presented, Shawn, so thank you for that. That was great. What I sort of got from your message was that we need something that carries us through those times of suffering, those times of disappointment, right? And otherwise, we're going to be a sort of a fair weather fan of God, right? Like, what could be worse than that?
That's it. And unfortunately, I think some of that is the product of Western television media preaching. We've got a lot of prosperity-type gospel being preached. And so the message people are getting, hey, follow Jesus. It's the ticket to Easy Street, and you'll be handsome and wealthy and successful. And that is not at all the story you find in the Bible. There's not one person that had an easy go of it. It's the opposite.
Right.
It's the opposite. And so sometimes we leave people in the pews, and I love miracles. I love the miracle story, guys. I don't want to get, they happen. I've seen things that I only read about in the book of Acts. I've seen blind people get their sight back. I've seen all of that. But that is not par for the course in everyday Christianity. And sometimes when we spend all of our time discussing, hey, who's the big miracle that happened to me, we get the odd person sitting in the pew that says, what about me? I guess God left me behind. And that's not true.
It's really relatable, I think, for a lot of people. If you're watching, please go ahead and drop your comments or questions in the chat. We'd love to interact.
Be nice. I can't help how I look.
He's a handsome man. Sholo, what did you have?
That's awesome. So, one thing, in fact, two sentences, short phrases that I got from your sermon. Living in light of eternity.
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember mentioning that.
I don't.
Somewhere
sometimes I open my mouth and stuff comes out for an hour, and I don't remember.
Yeah, and then we don't get paid until Jesus is paid.
That's exactly it.
That's right. So how do you communicate that to somebody that's going through a rough time?
Yeah, I do that all the time. My wife and I have gone through some crushing times, and unbelievably crushing times. I don't like giving organ concerts and talk about everything, but one example, about 12 years ago, I flatlined in the hospital, and I lost my ministry for a while. I lost the ability to speak for a while. And I got mad at God. I call it failing the Job test. I totally got mad at God. Hey, it's like, hey, man, what about, I gave you my whole life, like he owes me something. And I have found that when people come to me, it's like, hey, hang in there, take a look. It's Hebrews really 11. It's that final verse, not one of them. Saw the promise. Not one of them saw the promise. Right. And Jesus hasn't even seen the promise yet.
So the question on the Sabbath school discussion this morning that really struck me, the panelist put it to the moderator put it to the panel, is suffering unavoidable for Christians, right? Is it something that is strictly unavoidable? It's something that we all must pass through as Christians.
Yeah.
And some of the panelists sort of demurred on that point. What do you folks think?
I say yes. I say, find me a Bible character, a lead Bible character. They're all there as examples to us, right? Paul says these were written as, in the Old King James, ensamples to us. And find me one that didn't. Find me one that didn't. And there might be one, but I'm not aware of one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Paul left outside the village stoned. I mean, is this what I get paid for preaching? Gave up a promising career as an intellectual. Moses, give me a break, Jeremiah, Jonah, come on, man.
Anybody that we know any extent about in the Bible underwent some sort of suffering. What do you think?
I think so too. But it's though we have those that we don't have much description. Like I'm thinking about that Elijah, that we don't have much information about. It seems like they didn't suffer, but for sure, if they were on planet Earth.
If you're swimming upstream against the world, which is what following Jesus is, how do you not hit friction?
Right.
Yeah.
How do you not hit friction?
Right.
And David, I read the Psalms. I cling to those, and I often will, when I make friends out there in the world and they're telling me what's going on in their life, why would God let this happen? We just start working our way through the Psalms. I don't address it. I let God address it. And it's Psalm 73. It's David. Have I cleaned my hands in vain? What in the world? It's the wicked doing well, and I'm suffering.
Yeah.
That's a man after God's own heart.
I didn't understand the Psalms until, as a young pastor, I started doing hospital visitations.
You better believe
I
it.
didn't really suffer in life as a young person, but when you're before somebody laying on a hospital bed, they can't even communicate with you. They're suffering this much. What else can you bring to them, right? You just open the Psalms and begin to read.
That and a lot of I don't know.
Yeah.
Why didn't God intervene? The best thing you can say is, I don't know, but you will find out. I often just refer to the fact God's not afraid. He's gotten, Freedom of Information Act. He's going to open it up. He's going to explain it. I can't.
So to be like Mr. Rogers and answer my own question, what I came to for the
Do you have a mystery in a brown bag? That you're not
I
gonna-
would love
Yeah.
to. We need a prop in here, guys. What I thought immediately when that question came up in the Sabbath School panel this morning was, if anyone wishes to follow after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross,
Pick up a cross.
and follow me. Right? And we think the cross is an instrument of death, but it was really an instrument of suffering before death,
Torture.
right? It
10,
was-
11 days.
Of course. And so when they hear take up the cross, that means you're going to have to suffer. And the quote, well, suffering can have different purposes, right? We can talk about that. But I do think if we take Jesus's indication there seriously, we can expect some form of serious suffering to be a part of our Christian experience. And it may not even necessarily be because God wants to refine us or something like that. It may be because the devil just gets his way sometimes, right?
Yeah,
like
he
he
does.
did with Job. And regardless, what we do when we suffer is share in the experience of Jesus Christ. And that, I think, is something that in the New Testament, counterintuitively, they find quite precious, to be able to share in the experience of Christ.
Right. I find it interesting. Oh, sorry. I stepped on you.
No, go ahead.
No, I find it interesting. There are a lot of Christian books written over the years, and the ones, some of them are, hey, look at all the miracles God performed, and those are enjoyable. Which are the ones with the biggest longevity? Which are the books that stand the test of time century after century after century? It's the Christians who suffer.
Yeah.
Why? Why do those stand the test of time? They resonate with believers.
Yeah. Sholo, go ahead. You have a whole bunch of questions. I don't know if we can
You
get
got a
through
bunch of
them.
stuff that
So
I'm
pick your
not
favorite
smart
ones.
enough to answer. I'm peeking over there. It's like, let me get my glasses on so I look smarter than I am.
Don't stress yourself.
Right.
And so I'm just thinking about, for example, because there are some struggles that we have among us as Christians, like as a church, right? So we could be struggling with relationships between ourselves. We could also be struggling with health, vision as a church. So how would what would be your advice to such a church that's struggling, but it's just the inner issues that we have to deal with?
I tell you this. I think we run into trouble anytime the focus becomes us, whether we're suffering or not. It's tempting to say, man, I got to work on me.
Yeah.
And sometimes we think of that in terms of sanctification too. It's like, man, the thing I got to do is grit my teeth and pray more and clean myself up to be ready for Jesus to come. Now, is that all important? Prayer, Bible study? Yes, it is. There's a statement in Steps to Christ. It's on page 80 that's fascinating. It's one sentence. It's going to be the Boonstra paraphrase, I'm afraid, because
That's
my
fine.
memory, as I
That's
get
all
older,
right.
Well, I'm impressed you remember page 80, so go
It's
right
page
ahead.
80.
Yeah.
The only way, not one of the ways, the only way to grow in grace is to work disinterestedly for the benefit of others.
Right.
So what happens? We take eyes off of self. The cure for suffering is to address somebody else's suffering.
Yeah.
The cure for in unsanctified life is to share the gospel with somebody else, because you finally get out of the way that way. If it's like, I got to clean up my act, your focus is you. Pride was the original sin. That's not going to work. But focusing on others, being a benefit to others, taking Christ to others, your ego gets out of the way and the Holy Spirit can work on you finally, because you're not in the way anymore.
Yeah. So in that case, then the church will tend to
Yeah.
service.
A fighting church,
Yeah.
I've often said, hey, who's willing to go win souls? Let's go knock on doors. Let's go meet the community. And it might be 3. I don't care. We're going to go get the 3, and the next week I come back and say, hey, you 3, why don't you tell everybody what happened?
Yeah.
Pick up one more. I ignore the troublemakers, and that makes them mad, and everybody, no, you got to resolve that. No, you don't. You don't have to resolve that. Ellen White also made a comment that said, it is not the job of the pastor to settle all the conflicts in the church, period.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, so get about the business. It won't make all the problems go away, but 80% of them evaporate, and the people who really hate it, they go away. That sounds pretty mercenary, but it's the truth.
Yeah, yeah. Because most of the time we do waste a lot of time with those small
Yeah.
issues, right?
Why chase the devil's rabbits?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have just a counterpoint here. I have done conflict ministry in churches
Okay.
that
That's
have
also
been very
important.
conflicted,
Yeah,
right?
but-
And it is important.
All
but
right.
At the end of the day, if it's not for something bigger, right? If there's not a higher purpose toward which we are pushing,
Yeah.
then there isn't that common ground in which to resolve those kinds of conflicts that can really, need a resolution in the church.
Yeah, no, and I stand corrected somewhat, but I know. But I'll maintain this point.
Sure.
It's that the problem in conflict is typically pride. And when you're working for others, pride has a way of evaporating.
Yeah.
Especially when you're sitting down with somebody and you have no answers for them.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People think, man, Shawn, you've been an evangelist 30 years. You got answers for people. No, I don't. I sit dumbfounded in people's homes, my jaw on the ground. Well, what do you think of that, Pastor? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's humbling. And suddenly you realize why we need Jesus.
Yeah.
When ego and ego's pride is the problem. And if you can find an antidote to pride, not all. You'll notice I didn't say all conflict goes away, but most of it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. We're coming up on our wrap-up time. I just want to note that there are some people in the comments section here really thanking you for your ministry and saying this is just
that's
what they
very
needed
nice
to
of
hear
you.
tonight.
Thanks, Mom.
But
I gave a bunch of people $20 to get in there tonight.
Yeah.
Shola, why don't you toss out one more quick one and then maybe we'll wrap.
Okay, so one more quick one. I'm thinking about in the morning you spoke about the importance of spiritual prophecy. So the role of prophecy, how can it help us during this, like dealing with challenges, suffering and challenges?
The role of prophecy.
Yeah, in a suffering Christian's life.
I think it's the fact that the only thing God's people have ever had are those promises. And for me, prophecy is not about timelines and predicting the future. And Jesus once said to his disciples, I tell you these things now so that when they come to pass, you will know that I am he.
Exactly.
It's about confirmation. It is not about predicting the future.
Yeah.
So when I'm suffering, I look at it and thinking, okay, wait a minute. Prophecy says that's the way it goes down.
Yeah.
What's the promise? What's the promise? The promise is there's an end to it. It won't go on forever, and I'm not going to suffer any more than Jesus did.
I think that really doesn't make sense if there's not a restoration of all things that is coming.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the whole thing falls apart. But
Well,
there
that's
is that
Albert.
promise.
That's Albert Camus, right? He came down to finally saying, "Let's just live in this very second, because the future's pointless. The past is gone. I'll live in this very second." And he died despondent.
Yeah. Just fighting absurdity with absurdity, it seems. It's
You've read The Stranger.
Yeah.
Not recommended for children under 12.
Yeah.
We should be wrapping right now, but I just want to throw. Somebody actually asked a question in the comments section. I
Yep.
know it's hard for you guys to get your comments in there because we're going fast and there's a delay. So someone says, so should we really feel blessed to suffer, to go through trials? If we don't, what does that say or tell us?
All right, here's the flip side of the coin. There are Christians who go seeking suffering because they're pretty sure they're holier if they go looking for it. And that's not it either. I wouldn't go hunting for it. It'll come to you. You do God's will, it'll come to you. But there are people who think, man, I need to suffer more. Just wait. It'll come to you. Do God's work. Don't go seeking it. That's a whole... Man, we need another hour because that's a brand of Christianity that is messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think that's a great final thought.
Y'all are messed up, and now the show's over.
No, I think that this idea that we don't go seeking it, just go out and do God's work.
That's it.
And
That's right.
and let what happens, and trust that God is in it all, working through it all, and will pull you through in the end.
That's right.
Yeah. Buckle up. If you're scared you're not going to suffer, this is planet Earth. Buckle up. It's coming.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Wonderful.
It's coming. It's coming. Buckle up. I love the ride, right? Let's do it. But as I said,
The most uplifting show on the internet,
it
folks.
doesn't make sense unless there's a coming restoration.
Amen.
That's right.
Of
That's
all
it.
things.
That's right. That's right.
I'm trying to wrap this up, guys.
Yeah, I know.
So if
That may be
suffering
the worst
then-
show in Adventist history, right there. It's like,
Well, you know, I actually, and I said this a week ago, is that I preached a whole sermon series together with my associate pastor on God and the problem of suffering and evil, and that
Oh, wow.
is the most response that I've ever gotten to a sermon series that I've ever done. I think these are real issues that
Yeah.
people want to know how to handle this sort of thing. I thank you for bringing this to our camp meeting,
Yeah.
Shawn. Sholo, thanks for being such a great co-host. I know we've gone through a number of them.
we're out of time because there's some really hard questions coming up. I looked at number 7, and it's like, I'm not smart enough for that.
We hope to be here next year at camp meeting as well. If you appreciated this, let the conference administration know. We might even have a better studio. You might even have some better
Well, this is
hosts.
pretty nice. It's pretty nice.
I appreciate that approval coming from someone in media ministries.
Yeah,
that
I-
affirmation means a lot to us.
No, it looks pretty good. I'm looking at the downlink over there, and that's like, yeah,
Fantastic.
you guys are handsome too. So that,
Compliment repaid.
Yeah.
On that point, we're just going to say goodnight. God bless you. We'll see you next year at camp meeting.
All
Happy
right.
Sabbath.
Blessings.
and.